support the channel, you can click on the link in the description to donate. Hello everyone. Today I would like to talk about an issue that comes up quite a bit in discussions about God, miracles, and whether or not a supernatural realm does in fact exist. That is, the issue of whether God's existence is a scientific question, whether science can detect God or a supernatural realm. Sometimes, when this issue comes up, certain people are quick to point out that there's no scientific evidence of miracles or of divine intervention ever taking place in our universe. I recently talked to a young man who more or less asserted just that there isn't any scientific evidence for the miraculous or a supernatural realm. I responded by saying that science actually has nothing to say about whether a supernatural realm exists. Let me explain what I mean by that. I certainly believe that there is scientific evidence that points to a creator and designer of the universe, such as the scientific evidence that pertains to the beginning of the universe, the information in DNA, and of course the fine-tuning of the constants of the universe. But obviously, no scientific process is actually capable of directly detecting the supernatural, because science only deals with the natural. Therefore, no scientific discovery could ever preclude or disprove the existence of God or miracles or a supernatural realm. The reason for this is because the question of the supernatural or the divine is simply beyond the scope of science. Scientists purposely limit themselves to only dealing with questions that pertain to the natural realm. So it really doesn't make sense for someone to look at a theory like the theory of abiogenesis or the theory of evolution, Darwinian evolution, and conclude that such theories somehow demonstrate that God doesn't exist or that there's no need for a God. The reason for this is because even if the theories of abiogenesis and evolution, Darwinian evolution, are true, that doesn't disprove the existence of God or the supernatural, because such theories only deal with the natural processes. Therefore, they can't definitively answer questions regarding the divine. I'll provide an illustration that Edward Feser uses in his book, 5 Proofs of the Existence of God. No one would deny that a metal detector is really good at detecting metal, even to a definitive degree. But it would obviously be absurd for someone to suggest that since a metal detector is really good at detecting metal, we should also expect it to be good at detecting wood. And if we can't detect wood with a metal detector, then it must be the case that wood just doesn't exist. Obviously, such a conclusion wouldn't follow, because a metal detector doesn't have the capacity to detect wood in the first place. In like manner, or by the same token, scientific processes are really good at directly detecting things that pertain to the natural realm. But just like a metal detector isn't capable of detecting wood, scientific processes aren't capable of directly detecting the supernatural. But since they aren't capable of directly detecting the supernatural, someone can't reasonably conclude that the supernatural doesn't exist on the basis of any scientific theory. For example, regarding abiogenesis and Darwinian evolution, it could easily be argued that God used natural processes to create and diversify life. That is certainly a possibility that science can't rule out, because it simply isn't capable of ruling it out, since it is restricted to only dealing with that which is natural. Therefore, it is the case that the question of whether God exists, as well as questions regarding miracles and the divine, are for theology and philosophy to answer. For the question of God's existence, as well as the existence of miracles, fall within the scopes of theology and philosophy. With that said, we certainly do see evidence that is scientific in nature that indirectly points to the existence of God, like the information in DNA and the beginning of the universe, but that shouldn't be confused with the notion that science can definitively rule out the possibility of God's existence or the existence of miracles. Such a notion is nonsensical for reasons that have already been stated. Well guys, that's it for this video. So as always, let me know what you think, and please remember to like and subscribe. Thank you.